The 14th floor, it shone back at me, a silent countdown. Today, that single word, a mantra against the rising tide of panic. The door side opened, and there she was, on a radiant the scarf she wore, a splash of defiant color against the steel and glass of our shared reality, of my asterisk reality, a reality I had built brick by brick with isolation and fear. She stepped inside, a universe contained in that small, shared space, the doors closing behind her, sealing us in. A moment, an eternity. Then, her smile, that smile. The one that arrived precisely at 3 in the afternoon, a subtle upturn of her lips, a fleeting warmth that somehow managed to thaw the glacial landscape of my soul. It was a smile not for me, of course, but at me, or perhaps, just simply near me. A collateral kindness, a sunbeam falling indiscriminately on barren ground. But for those few seconds, bathed in its borrowed light, I dared to believe it was something more. Now, caught in the sterile cage of the elevator, the fluorescent hum a mocking soundtrack to my cowardice. That smile found me again, brief, warm, expectant, perhaps. No, that was delusional. Hope was a dangerous drug, a siren song luring me towards the jagged rocks of my own inadequacies. I wanted to say something, anything, a simple good afternoon, a clumsy comment about the weather, some utterance, anything to prove I existed, that I was more than just another gray suit inhabiting the same oxygen. But the words caught in my throat, tangled in the barbed wire of my anxiety. My tongue, thick and useless, lay like lead. Her eyes were hazel, I think, or maybe green, flecked with gold. The light shifted, played tricks, details became magnified, overwhelming, the subtle curve of her cheekbone, the way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Each tiny gesture, a seismic event in the Richter scale of my carefully constructed indifference. I stared, frozen, a statue carved from fear and regret. The numbers above the door blinked downwards, each descending digit a hammer blow against my dwindling resolve. 13, 12, 11, the air thrummed with unspoken possibilities, with the unbearable weight of what could be, what would never be. I imagined conversations, imagined laughter, imagined a connection forged in the crucible of shared moments. Fantasies, all of them, impossible dreams fueled by a 3 o'clock smile. My life was a series of misconnections, of half-hearted attempts and stammered apologies, a graveyard of unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. Each day, a repetition of the last, a carefully choreographed dance of avoidance and self-deprecation. The coffee shop encounter where I choked on my greeting, the dating app profile forever, unread, the weight of all those failures pressed down on me, a suffocating blanket woven from doubt. The 14th floor was a sentence, a life term in the prison of my own making. And she, Anna, was a beautiful, unattainable parole I would never be granted. 2 weeks. That's all the time I had. 2 weeks until she moved on, until her smile vanished from my daily horizon, leaving me adrift in a sea of anonymity. 2 weeks to break free. 2 weeks to find my voice. 2 weeks to defy the inertia of my own existence. But how? How could I possibly bridge the chasm that separated us? The gulf between her effortless grace and my crippling self-consciousness. The elevator continued its descent, each floor a step closer to the inevitable abyss of my regret. 10, 9, 8. My pulse hammered in my ears, a frantic drumbeat urging me to act. Now, before it was too late, before the doors opened and she stepped back into her life, leaving me stranded in mine, she was moving to Italy. I'd overheard it near the water cooler. Rome, Florence, Venice. Cities of art and romance, of passion and possibility, cities that belonged in her life, not mine. 7, 6, 5. I imagined her strolling through sun-drenched piazzas, laughing with friends, her scarf billowing in the Mediterranean breeze. And I would still be here, trapped in this glass and steel cage, haunted by the ghost of a 3 o'clock smile. 4, 3, 2. The doors began to slide open, revealing the mundane reality of the ground floor lobby, the bustling crowds, the indifferent faces. Her moment to leave me, my moment to never see her again. She turned to me, her hazel green gold eyes meeting mine, the briefest flicker of something unreadable in their depths. "Have a good day," she said, her voice soft and melodic. And then she was gone, leaving me alone with the lingering scent of her perfume and the crushing weight of my unspoken words. The doors closed, but something shifted within me, a tiny crack in the dam of my fear. A seed of hope, watered by a 3 o'clock smile, began to sprout. What did she do after work? Her 3 p.m. smile lights a familiar dread, the kind that settles deep in your bones, a cold weight against the rhythm of your heart. 14 floors. That's all that separated my world from hers, a metallic cage ascending and descending, a fleeting stage for a silent play. And I, the perpetually tongue-tied understudy, forever waiting in the wings. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed, each flicker a mocking reminder of the precious seconds slipping away. Screens glowed, casting pale shadows across my face, reflecting the endless spreadsheets and unanswered emails that constituted my existence. Numbers blurred, deadlines loomed, but behind it all, a single image burned. Her smile. Every day, at precisely 3, the elevator doors would slide open. And there she'd be, Anna, bathed in the warm afternoon light filtering through the skyscraper. Windows, a brief, radiant beacon in the sterile landscape of my day. The 3 p.m. smile, it wasn't directed *at me, not really. It was a courtesy, a universal kindness offered without expectation. But to me, it was everything. The rest of the day was a muted symphony of keyboard clicks and hushed phone calls, a gray wash of routine designed to anesthetize. I was a ghost in the machine, a cog in the corporate clockwork, invisible, unheard, content, perhaps, in my quiet anonymity, until 3 o'clock. Then the elevator bell would chime, a prelude to the moment that could either break me or... Well, I didn't know what it could do. It just was. A tiny spark of hope, a fleeting illusion of connection in a world that felt increasingly disconnected. I tried, God, I tried. There was the coffee shop incident, the memory still searingly embarrassing. The stammered good morning that choked in my throat, morphing into a garbled mess of consonants. The barista's pitying look. The silent judgment of the line behind me. And the dating app, a digital graveyard of carefully crafted profiles and unanswered messages. A swipe left, a swipe right. The endless scroll, the hollow promise of connection replaced by the crushing weight of rejection. The virtual world mirrored the real, alone. So, the 3 p.m. smile became my anchor. My daily dose of sunshine, a reminder that beauty, however fleeting, still existed. It was pathetic, I knew, to build an entire fantasy around a simple, polite gesture. But it was all I had. I replayed the moment in my head, analyzed the subtle curve of her lips, the gentle crinkle around her eyes. Was there a hint of something, a spark of recognition? Or was I projecting my own desperate longing onto an innocent expression? The crushing truth was, it didn't matter. Whatever it was all I had. The whispers started circulating last week. Anna's leaving, moving to Italy, new opportunity. The words echoed through the office, each syllable a hammer blow to my fragile hope. 2 weeks, that's all the time I had left. 14 days to find the courage, the words, the something to bridge the chasm between us. 2 weeks to turn the 3 p.m. smile into what? I didn't know. I only knew I couldn't let her go without trying. But how could I, the invisible man, suddenly materialize into someone worthy of her attention? How could I, the master of avoidance, suddenly confront the very fear that had defined my existence? The weight of those questions pressed down on me, suffocating, paralyzing. 2 weeks. The clock was ticking, and with each passing second, the 3 p.m. smile threatened to fade. to become nothing more than a bittersweet memory, another ghost in the hallways of my life. The thought that she was leaving was something I couldn't quite digest. Each day, she would soon be taking her smile out of my life forever, and yet, even with the darkness closing in, a tiny ember of hope refused to be extinguished. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe, just maybe, I could find the courage to speak. But what if speaking only confirmed my deepest fear, that I was forever destined to be silent? The 14th floor became an obsession, a digital shrine erected from pixels and fleeting water cooler whispers. Anna's world, once a blank canvas, was now sketched in broad strokes. Graphic designer. Loves dogs, judging by the endless parade of pug photos on her dormant social media. Moving to Italy, the word echoed in the sterile hum of the office, a sun-drenched dreamscape mocking the gray reality of my cubicle. I constructed elaborate scenarios, shimmering fantasies, where I, the silent observer, became the leading man. Cobblestone streets, candlelit dinners, shared laughter under a Tuscan moon. But the reel always jammed on the same frame, my mouth, frozen, a silent scream trapped behind my teeth. The grand gestures withered in the face of my own crippling inadequacy. Each overheard snippet of conversation became a precious clue, a thread pulled from the tapestry of her life. Double shot latte, extra foam, that was mine, wasn't it? A simple offering, a silent acknowledgement. I imagined the exchange 1,000 times, each version more agonizing than the last. I practiced the greeting in front of the bathroom mirror, the words brittle and unnatural on my tongue. Good morning, Anna. I noticed you like lattes, and I thought the practiced. Smile felt like a grimace. The whole thing felt like an impersonation. The day arrived. A Tuesday, overcast and thick with humidity. The coffee sat heavy in my hand, its warmth a cruel reminder of the cold sweat gathering on my palms. I waited, positioned strategically, near her desk, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. She walked past, engrossed in a conversation, her eyes focused on her colleague. Gone, the coffee cooled. I tossed it, the gesture mirroring the discarding of another failed attempt. The mirror became my tormentor. Each morning, I'd stare back at the reflection, searching for a strength I couldn't find. I saw only the sum of my anxieties, the ghosts of past failures etched into the lines around my eyes. Could she see it too? Did she see the fear, the desperation, lurking beneath the surface? Her Instagram became a dangerous obsession. Each carefully curated post was a glimpse into a world I could never touch, a highlight reel of experiences forever beyond my reach. I scrolled endlessly, dissecting every detail, searching for a secret invitation, a hidden clue that might unlock the door. There were pictures from a company event, amateur snapshots capturing fleeting moments of joy and camaraderie. She had an eye, a natural talent for composition. A spark of something real amidst the corporate drudgery. Days bled into weeks, the clock ticking down with relentless precision. Her departure date loomed, a guillotine poised to sever the fragile thread that connected us. My silence became a self-imposed prison, each failed attempt reinforcing the bars. I saw the pity in the eyes of my coworkers, a silent judgment of my pathetic, unrequited longing. I overheard another conversation, a brief mention of a going-away party, a farewell gathering at some trendy rooftop bar. My stomach churned. A room full of people, all vying for her attention, all effortlessly engaging in the social dance that I could never master. The thought of it paralyzed me. I could picture myself standing alone in the corner, nursing a warm beer, a silent spectator at the closing of my own private show. Sleep offered no escape, only a relentless replay of my failures. I tossed and turned, haunted by her fleeting smile, the echo of her laughter, the ghost of what could have been. The chasm between reality and fantasy widened with each passing day, each missed opportunity. I was adrift in a sea of self-doubt, the shore receding further and further into the distance. I was drowning in longing, and then, amidst the swirling, vortex of anxiety and despair, I saw it. A glimmer of something new, a photograph, an opportunity. A tiny, flickering ember of hope refusing to be extinguished. The notion, fragile as a butterfly's wing, took flight in my mind. But what if even this small gesture was destined to fail? What if even this tiny spark would only illuminate the depth of my own inadequacy? The anonymous note, a desperate, childish gamble. I poured all my pent-up admiration into those few carefully chosen words, hoping they'd somehow reach her, resonate within the vast, indifferent space of the office. And then, the elevator, the next day, the extended smile. It wasn't just a flicker, the usual brief acknowledgement. It lingered, held, almost. Expectant, hope, a dangerous parasite, bloomed in my chest. I allowed myself to believe, to imagine, that my clumsy, voiceless adoration hadn't gone unnoticed. That somewhere beneath the surface of her effortless grace, she felt something too. Something mirroring the quiet storm raging within me. Suddenly, the leaving party seemed less like a looming deadline and more like an opportunity, a stage set for a final, daring act. I started crafting the speech. Not a grand, sweeping declaration, but something quieter, more honest. A confession of the small, daily moments that had become the architecture of my days, the way the light caught her hair in the elevator, the way she effortlessly navigated the crowded hallways, the simple, pure joy of her 3 p.m. smile. I rehearsed it endlessly, in the sterile confines of my apartment, during my solitary lunch breaks, the words echoing in the empty stairwell. I wanted it to be perfect, polished, worthy of the moment, worthy of her. The words formed in my mind, coalescing into what I hoped was a coherent expression of my feelings. I focused on the way her eyes sparkled in the elevator light and how I looked forward to this moment every day. I reminded myself to breathe, to stay calm, and to show her how much I truly cared. I even planned the exact moment to deliver it. After the lukewarm speeches, after the forced laughter and clinking glasses, when the crowd thinned, and she stood alone by the window, gazing out at the sprawling city. That would be my chance, my moment. I pictured it in vivid detail. The city lights twinkling behind her, a constellation mirroring the nervous flutter in my stomach. The soft murmur of conversation fading into the background as I approached. My heart hammering against my ribs. The hesitant beginning, the building confidence, the final, vulnerable unveiling of my truth. I could almost feel the weight lift from my shoulders, the suffocating silence finally broken. See the surprise in her eyes, the slow dawning of understanding, maybe even reciprocation. The days leading up to the party became a blur of frantic preparation. I chose a tie I thought she might like, a muted blue, reminiscent of the Italian coast I knew she was headed to. I practiced my posture, my voice, even the way I hold my glass of sparkling cider, a pathetic substitute for the champagne everyone else would be drinking. The office, usually a landscape of muted grays and monotonous hums, transformed into a stage. Every corridor, every meeting room, a potential backdrop for my imagined scene. I saw her everywhere, in the break room, laughing with colleagues, by the water cooler, sharing travel tips, each citing a threshold of nervous energy, fueling my anticipation. I started to feel lighter, almost buoyant. The weight of years of self-doubt seemed to lessen, replaced by a fragile but persistent sense of hope. The 3 p.m. smile, once a fleeting moment of solace, now felt like a promise, a silent encouragement. I truly believed in the power of my carefully crafted words, in the potential of a connection that had existed only in my mind, in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, my quiet, unremarkable existence was about to be transformed, that I wasn't invisible, that I was worthy of being seen. And then the day arrived. The air thrummed with a different kind of energy, a mixture of excitement and farewell. The leaving party loomed. The stage was set. My speech was ready, but somewhere, deep down, a sliver of doubt remained. a nagging whisper that reminded me of my past failures, my inherent awkwardness. The fear that this was all an elaborate delusion, a fragile castle built on sand. Was I truly seeing her? Or just projecting my own desperate longing onto a fleeting smile? The elevator doors open on the 14th floor, the party music thumping in the background, a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. It was now or never. Tonight, I'd know if the smile I had been chasing held any truth, or simply a reflection of my own loneliness. The note, it was a foolish gesture, a clumsy attempt to breach the uncrossable chasm between us. I'd imagine her face lighting up, a spark of recognition, a shared secret blooming in the sterile air of the 14th floor. Instead, the longer smile, the almost expectant gaze, was a cruel mirage shimmering in the desert of my hopes. The elevator doors hissed open, and there she was, standing just beyond the threshold of my carefully constructed fantasy. This was it, the moment, my practice words, rehearsed 1,000 times in the solitude of my cubicle, trembled on the tip of my tongue. But before a single syllable could escape, she spoke. Her voice, usually a bright melody I only caught in fragments by the water cooler, was now a somber tune, a polite, careful apology. The smile, the radiant, life-affirming smile, began to fade like a photograph bleached by the unforgiving sun. It wasn't directed at me, not really. It was a correction. She knew. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The anonymous note, my lifeline, my pathetic offering, had been traced back to its source. My handwriting, the evidence of my infatuation, plain and unmistakable. I wanted to disappear, to meld into the chrome walls of the elevator car, to become one with the anonymous crowd surging through Times Square below. There was someone else. Of course, there was someone else, someone real, someone tangible, someone who existed outside the confines of my daydreams. A fellow photographer met at the very company event where her work had captured my attention, an event where I had lingered in the shadows, unnoticed, unseen, a ghost in my own life. The longer smile. It wasn't for me, it was for Susan from accounting. Susan, whose photography was displayed near Anna's, whose work I barely glanced at, whose very existence I had categorized as safe, boring, beyond my reach. The irony twisted in my gut, a bitter, acidic taste. She actually thought, I had feelings for Susan, who always wore sensible shoes and talked about spreadsheets with a passion I could never understand. Susan, who probably wouldn't stammer and sweat if she were trapped in an elevator with the woman of her dreams. The floor dropped out from under me. The carefully constructed narrative of my life, the fragile hope I'd nurtured for weeks, shattered into a million pieces. I saw myself reflected in the polished steel of the elevator doors, a pathetic, lonely figure clinging to a fantasy, oblivious to the reality unfolding around him. My practiced speech, the heartfelt words I'd so carefully crafted, withered and died in my throat. There was nothing to say. Nothing could say. Every word would only amplify the awkwardness, the sheer, unbearable mortification of the moment. The elevator lurched to a stop. The doors opened, offering escape. Anna stepped out, her apology hanging in the air like a shroud. She offered a final, fleeting smile, tinged with pity, maybe even a hint of regret. And then she was gone. I stood there, alone in the elevator. The doors slowly closing, the 14th floor swam into view, then vanished. The descent began, a slow, agonizing journey into the depths of my own despair. The 3 p.m. smile, it had never been real. It had been a projection of my own desires, a misinterpretation of kindness, a desperate grasp at a connection that simply wasn't there. My reflection stared back at me, hollow-eyed, defeated. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out, back, into the great, soul-crushing reality of the office. But everything was different now. The world had shifted on its axis, and I was no longer the hopeful observer, the silent admirer. I was The fool, I walked back to my cubicle, the weight of my failure pressing down on me. The screensaver on my computer flashed, a picture of a sun-drenched Italian landscape. Hurriedly, a place I would never see, a life I would never share, the realization dawned, cold and sharp as shattered glass. It wasn't just a missed opportunity that stung. It was the profound, crushing awareness of my own inadequacy. I was invisible. And maybe I always would be. The air in the office felt thicker, heavier. Somehow, each keystroke of my colleagues' keyboards felt like a hammer blow. How could I ever face them again? How could I ever face myself? Was the chance already lost? The echo of her laughter, once a phantom melody in my day, now felt like a cruel taunt resonating in the hollow spaces I had built around myself. My fortress of solitude, reinforced brick by painful brick, now felt complete and utterly desolate. Had I imagined it all? The subtle warmth in her eyes, the almost imperceptible pause before the doors slid open, was the 3 p.m. smile, nothing more than a practiced courtesy, a reflex offered to another faceless drone in the machine. The question spiraled, relentless and unforgiving. Each doubt clawed at the fragile hope I had dared to cultivate, tearing it to shreds. I looked at my hands, at the trembling fingers that had typed her name, her title, her interest into the digital void, evidence of my what? Obsession, admiration, delusion. Each click of the mouse, each keystroke, now felt like another nail hammered into the coffin of my own making, the digital shrine I had erected in her honor. That curated collection of information gleaned from the internet's vast ocean became unbearable. I could no longer bear to look at the screen. With a cold, detached resolve, I began to dismantle it. Each file deleted, each image banished to the recycle bin, felt like a physical act of amputation. Snippets of articles, LinkedIn, profiles, travel blogs all reduced to digital dust. As though erasing the data could somehow erase the memory, the yearning, the foolish, breathtaking hope that had bloomed in the sterile air of the 14th floor, the deletion was a ritual, a cleansing, but instead of catharsis, I found only a deeper, more profound emptiness. It was as if I were erasing not just Anna's digital footprint from my computer, but her very presence from my memory, from my life. The act felt obscene, a betrayal of the brief, incandescent connection I thought we shared. Each step of the way, I wrestled with the raw, burning humiliation. I had misread the signs. I had conjured fantasies from fleeting moments. I had built a castle on sand, only to watch the tide wash it all away. I was a fool, a pathetic, predictable fool, trapped in the amber of his own anxieties. The elevator, I couldn't face it, not yet. The gleaming metal box, once a vessel of such trembling anticipation, now loomed as a symbol of my failure, so I took the stairs. All 14 flights, each step was a penance, a physical manifestation of my descent. The pounding in my chest echoed the turmoil in my soul. The burn in my thighs mirrored the ache in my heart. The silence of the stairwell was broken only by the rhythmic thud of my shoes on the concrete. It was a solitary journey, a descent into the depths of my own making. The office, once a place of routine and quiet desperation, now felt like a foreign land. I avoided the water cooler, the break room, any space where I might inadvertently catch a glimpse of her, a reminder of my folly. Days bled into weeks. The 3 p.m. hour became a time of dread, a reminder of what I had lost, or perhaps never had. The brief, accidental eye contact, the almost imperceptible shift in her expression. These were now phantom sensations, ghosts of a hope that never materialized. The world felt muted, gray. The vibrant colors that had seemed to permeate the air when she was near had faded, leaving behind a dull, oppressive monochrome. The other people in the office, the ones I barely noticed before, now seemed to exist on a different plane. They laughed, they gossiped, they connected. They moved through the world with an ease and confidence that felt utterly alien to me. I was an outsider, a ghost haunting the edges of their reality. Even Sarah, I had dismissed her too quickly, filed her away as another background player in the office drama. She was kind, always smiling, but I had deemed her ordinary, not worthy of my attention. How easily I had judged. How carelessly I had overlooked the quiet beauty that might have been right in front of me. Now, even she seemed to occupy a space I could no longer reach. Anna would be gone soon, off to Italy, to a life filled with art and passion, and him, and I would be left here, alone with the ruins of my shattered fantasy and the crushing weight of my own self-imposed isolation. Perhaps some wounds never truly heal, but simply scab over, forever sensitive to the slightest touch. I wondered if the 14th floor would ever feel the same, or if every ride in that elevator would be a silent, subtle reminder of the chance I missed, and the smile that was never really mine. Would I ever be able to look at another woman without the ghost of Anna coloring my perception, forever casting a shadow on what could be? The steel doors mocked me, their mirrored surface reflecting a hollowed-out version of the man I used to be. For days, I climbed the stairs, each step a painful reminder of my failure, a physical manifestation of the distance I placed between myself and any possibility of connection. But today was different. Today was her last day. The elevator, once a source of agonizing anticipation, had become a symbol of everything I lost or, perhaps, never had. Yet, a sliver of something stubborn, a flicker of defiance against the crushing weight of regret, compelled me toward those damned doors. I pressed the button. The chime echoed, sharp and unforgiving. As the doors parted, I braced myself for the emptiness, for the absence that would now define my 3 p.m. ritual. And it was there. The car was vacant, sterile, devoid of her light. A metallic tomb ascending, and descending without its precious cargo. I stepped inside, the air thick with unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams. The doors began to close, a mechanical sigh signaling the finality of it all. My chest tightened. This was it, the end of an era, the quiet death of a fantasy. Then, a blur of color. A hurried gasp. The door stuttered, then reluctantly slid open again. Standing there, framed by the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway, was Sarah from the 14th floor. The one I barely acknowledged, the one I mentally cataloged as safe, unremarkable, so completely unlike Hannah that she'd been rendered invisible. She was breathless, her cheeks flushed a delicate rose. A vibrant scarf, a splash of defiant color against her muted gray suit, was draped around her neck, and in her hand, she clutched a camera. A camera just like. Her smile was nervous, hesitant. An awkward, apologetic curve of her lips as she mumbled a soft, almost inaudible, "Hi, hi." That single syllable hung in the air, a fragile bridge spanning the chasm of my self-imposed isolation. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning man, a whisper of hope in the echoing silence of my regret. I remembered Anna's words, spoken to a group at the water cooler weeks ago, words I dismissed as corporate platitudes at the time. Take chances. Appreciate what you have. Don't let fear hold you back. They resonated now with a brutal clarity piercing through the fog of my obsession. My gaze lingered on Sarah, on the way the light caught the strands of her hair, on the genuine warmth radiating from her eyes. Eyes I had never truly seen. I returned the smile. It felt stiff, unfamiliar, like a muscle long unused. But it was a smile nonetheless, a tentative offering. An acknowledgement. In that moment, the weight of my meticulously constructed fantasy began to crumble. The idealized image of Anna, the unattainable goddess of the 14th floor, faded into the background, replaced by the tangible reality of the woman standing before me. I'd been so consumed by the pursuit of an illusion, so blinded by my own fear and insecurity, that I failed to see the potential for connection that had been right in front of me all along. The possibility of something real, something grounded, something attainable. The elevator remained suspended between floors, a liminal space holding the weight of unspoken words and unrealized opportunities. I said nothing. My voice, still trapped by habit, remained silent. But my eyes, finally open, spoke. Volumes. They held a flicker of something new, a spark of hope ignited from the ashes of my failed pursuit. Sarah's smile widened, subtly, mirroring the warmth I'd so desperately sought in Anna's fleeting gestures. It was a different smile, less radiant, perhaps, but more genuine, more real. The doors remained open for what seemed like an eternity, the silence broken only by the hum of the elevator machinery and the frantic beating of my own heart. Every fleeting moment holds a chance, sometimes just not the one you expect. And sometimes the most unexpected chances are the ones that hold the greatest promise or the deepest secrets.